give to them. So all of this has to be very, very clear in the beginning itself. And before you start with your survey, you need to get voluntary consent from the respondents. This is very important. And this can either be done orally or in a written form. But you need to explain to them your research, like I've told you already. You need to explain to them what are the expected outcomes. And then you get consent from the respondents before you begin with your interviews. And it's also, you need to make it clear that the respondents can at any time during the interview withdraw from it. Like, they can terminate the involvement if they're not comfortable with the kind of questions you're asking. If they say that, oh, I thought it was only supposed to be like, this way, and but now you're asking me questions about this, and I'm not comfortable in talking about this. You need to give them that space and that thing to, withdraw from the interview at any given point. And like I've already shared that, we would there would be a lot of personal questions that these social surveys require us to ask, a lot of sensitive information. And so it's important that you safeguard the identities of respondents even when you are collecting the data, and when you're saving it, when you're entering your data into your system, and also when you're sharing it. Like, you need to make sure that you put your hard copies and the soft copies in a place where there is extremely limited access by other people, even in your team. Only the people who require it for any kind of writing or whatever, that's who you give it to. It can be just restricted to one or two people. And what we also do is, like, when we're entering the data, we usually try to refrain from entering the name of the person, and we give them certain codes: household one, household two, or based on the village, you give them a particular code. And that's how you can also try and safeguard the identities and protect respondents and the responses that you've collected. So I will now take you through some of the methods that we would be using in North Bengal. So for the village level information that we plan to gather, which includes the history, the demography of the village, what are the culture like, if they have any cultural association with the hornbills and other wildlife. So all of this is, like, a very generic sense of information that you want to gather, right? So for this, what we would be doing is we would be interviewing key informants, and just select a few, like about 5 to 8 people in each village, and you go and interview them. Or you can have group discussions with these people together. And in this, you can give timelines and milestones. Say, for example, if there has been a flood in this region in 1986, so you tell them that, so you remember there was a flood at this on in this year. So was the road access to your available, in your village before the floods, or did it come after the floods? Did the healthcare system come before the floods or after the floods? So you give them certain timelines, and then, what are the milestones that the villages have achieved in the last 2 or 3 decades. You can also, like, then try and gather information on how each of these reforms or milestones have made any kind of an impact on the communities: a positive impact, a negative impact, or no impact at all. And during these discussions, you can also identify key decision makers of villages and who are the important people, so that later, if you plan to work and continue engaging with these communities, you could always approach these few people in the villages for their advice, seek their advice. And also, if there is a important message that you want to pass on to the communities, you could, go and explain it to these key people in the village. And once they've understood, and once you're able to convince them, they are at a better position to be able to convince the other community members. For the household level information, that is, gathering information on the socioeconomic status, what is the scale of resources that they use, and also, people's attitude and perception. So for this, what we've done is we have semi-structured questionnaires that are prepared. And you ask, like, and for the resource use and, the utilization, you have a list of resources that you already pre-identify. And for each resource, you then ask questions like, how often do you use this particular resource? Like for fuel hood, do you use it on a daily basis? Do you use it on a weekly basis? Or, whether you use LPG and fuel hood, and if you're using both, what is the frequency of LPG versus fuel hood? And also for water, like where do you collect water from. So all these other information like NTFP and many other resources that they're dependent on, you can try and understand the scale of utilization for each of these resources. And for attitudes, we usually use attitude statements where we list down a list of about 10 to 12 attitude statements which are neutral. Say, for example, I enjoy watching hornbills. So the respondents will then have to say whether they agree or disagree or have no reaction to the statement. So the statements can vary from species specific statements to about local reforms, about the way there are how is it for the communities there with their access to accessibility to resources. So you can frame your sentences, your statements in a way where you try to understand the perception across a wide range of subjects. And while you're doing these interviews, it's important that you have equal representation of men and women. And if it's a community which has many different ethnic groups, you need to also have equal representation of each of these ethnic groups. Another activity that is also very important is resource mapping, where sorry, which is a participatory rural appraisal tool, and this will give you again more information on people's dependency on resources, where what are the kind of where are the areas that people have to go and collect resources, and what are the challenges that they face in doing so. So this is usually you can do it separately for men and women, because some of the resources which are important for men may not be important for women, and resources important for women may not be considered important by the men. And also a lot of men and women may not also be comfortable in doing an activity together. So during this session, you have a list of questions ready, and you have about at least three people who are there to facilitate the entire session. So one will be the moderator, the other person will ask the question, and another person will try to put down the responses. And while you're doing this activity, at the end, you need to be able to share all the responses that you have noted down from the comments, and the whatever that the local people have shared with you. And you need to tell them that this is what we've gathered, this is the kind of information we've gathered from this activity, and they will again have to guide you to tell you, and if they want any modifications or if they want to edit any information, you need to give them complete ownership of the responses and the results of these activities as well. And again, you need prior consent from the communities before you do such activities. And yeah, you need to allow people to take charge of the results as well. Now, after discussions and engagements with communities, you would then get a fair idea of what the general public, what is their general idea of uh, wildlife, what is the general attitude towards a certain species, or towards conservation, or towards a particular reform. And you are also in a better position to understand the challenges and barriers that they face on a day-to-day basis. So all of this, it's important for you to reflect upon it after all your engagements with these communities. And then you draft an audience persona. So an audience persona is nothing but a first person narrative, where you put yourself in the place of a community member, the target audience that you plan to work with. And you give yourself it is basically a fictitious character. It does not have to be a character out of your interviews and surveys. It is a fictitious character that you create, which will give you where you put in all the information that you've collected over the last few months where you've engaged with communities. So you can give it a name, you can give it a certain age, gender, what are the education qualification like, also what were the attitude like, what was the barriers and motivations that the general people feel towards a certain thing, and also what are their own interests and values. So all of this will then help you understand, and you're in a better position to understand the local communities. And it will then guide you to create and develop conservation interventions which are very very sensitive and you know that there are certain barriers, there are certain challenges, and it's not easy to try and mitigate all of these challenges. You are not there to address all the problems, but what is it that can be done is something that you can focus on, right? And these have to be very, very sensitive, and it has to have some kind of a goal, and it has to be inclusive of the community. So I'd like to stop here for now. Just try and give a break because I've just been there's a lot of things that I spoke about. So let's do an activity. I hope everybody has a pen and a paper ready. Uh, if not, I hope you would be able to get hold of it without, without a hassle. So I would want you to think of your own locality, right? You imagine your locality, and I would want you to think that you want to work towards bringing a certain behavior change in your neighborhood, and that change is basically to help, and not help, but you want the houses in your locality to adopt waste segregation at source. So you segregate your wet waste and your other waste. And for the wet waste, you want to encourage the households to practice composting, right? Now, you need to identify your target audience. Who is it that you want to work with, like in your locality? Is it the men? Is it the women? Do they should they belong to a particular age, range, or would you want it to be any person who is interested? Do they have to have a prior interest in sustainable lifestyles, or is it somebody that you want to work, who's had no prior knowledge on sustainable lifestyles and sustainability, and you think that it is your responsibility to slowly engage them into these activities? So you then think of one person. You think of your entire neighborhood, and you try and write an audience persona in the first person narrative. So you start with I am, right? So you can say, I am so and so, I am Bindya. I am 35 years old, and I am I am a mother of two. I live with my husband and my in-laws. So you give your family details. Then you start writing about what are the barriers and challenges that you may face for adopting the change that somebody else wants you to change, right? So I would say, I to for me to be able to segregate my waste, these are the challenges that I will face. And you also add what are the motivations and long term benefits of doing so. So you take time and you try and be the person that you want to plan to work with in the future. So for this example, just take your locality and just say that the behavior change that you want to bring about is people segregate waste and practice composting. So I will give you 10 minutes. I think that should be fine, right? Does anybody have a question about this activity? I can't hear anybody. Hello?
Yes, I think if anyone has any questions or anything that you want her to explain about this activity, please you can switch on your microphone and ask.
Yeah. So you just have to write down, a few lines about being creating a character in your locality.
I think if it would help if you leave that last slide on the screen and present
Sure.
that last slide on the screen, so all those pointers would be there. It would be easy for them to.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think you have just 10 minutes to wind up this activity. So please go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. You can start with the activity, and after 10 minutes, we can share what you've put together. You can ask me questions. I'm not able to see the chat box, but you can unmute yourself and ask me questions. You can ask me questions if you have any. Unmute yourself.
Yes, Rishita, if you have any question, please go ahead and ask.
Yeah, I can't see the chat box, but you can unmute yourself.
Hello, am I audible? Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
ma'am,
we
I
can hear
wish to
you.
ask that
Yeah.
we can try to undertake any kind of behavioral change we want to bring, or this particular one, any kind of.
Yeah, I think I'd like you to do for this particular one so that we're all like on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah. You have about 3 minutes. so we can all then come and share what we've drafted. We'll wrap up in another 1 minute. Okay, I'll stop sharing now so that I can see the screen. Is anybody done? Does anybody want to share what you've prepared? I'd like somebody to volunteer and share whatever it is that you've prepared. Does somebody want to share?
Those, if you have already done, you can just unmute yourself, even switch on your camera and share with
Yeah,
Pam and us.
a
Yes.
couple of us, if we can share, then we can have some discussions on it.
Yeah. So Rishita, I think Rishika, Radhika, Priyasra, if you're done, please go ahead.
Anybody can share.
I would like to go ahead with it.
Will
So,
Yeah,
um,
sure, sure, please.
I am Rishita, and I am um, from Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh, and the change I would like to bring is waste segregation at this source level, and my target audience would be mainly urban space, and because a lot of household waste generated is not segregated, and uh, there is a lot of hazards connected with it, like especially electronic waste are not is posing a lot of harm these days because of our digital lifestyle, and it is generally not segregated and people lack awareness of it. So I would like to work with the families, and maybe I would collaborate with more young people who are like-minded and would like to bring a change to this uh, issue, and I would go and make people aware of it by short presentation, or by explaining them the cause and the uh, benefits of it. Yes, this I would like to do this.
Thanks, Rishita. Thanks for sharing. So what you shared is correct. Like, you listed out the problems, the cause of the problem, and also why it is important for us to do adopt this particular practice. And you were very specific that you would want to work with young people, right? So you have a clear set of, like, the target audience that you prefer to work with. But what you probably was, you were supposed to write as the person that you want to work with, like, not as Rishita, to work with. Say, for example, in your particular locality, if you plan to work with a young person, you would then, like, try and create the character of a young person in your locality and share the similar things that you've shared, but not as yourself, but as the person that you want to work with. So, you understand what they think, and what, like, it's kind of a role play that you do, like, you try and put yourself in the shoes of the target audience that you want to work with. But yeah, what you shared is correct. Like, you know who you want to work with and why you want to work it, why is it a problem in the first place. But yeah, so an audience persona is basically drafted in it's a basically a fictitious character which represents the larger community that you want to work with. Somebody has raised, and Himanshu, yes, please. Do you want to say something?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi.
So I have taken this character Sudha. So I am Sudha. I am 18 years old, and I belong to a rural family of Western Uttar Pradesh. My family belongs to rural middle class background. We are a joint family living together and following traditional values, and vulnerable to household waste management. I work with my grandmother uh, I help my grandmother in their household works, and my grandmother taught me about traditional sustainable living. And our ancestral occupation is farming and cattle rearing, and that is why I this is my motivation of initiating the behavioral change regarding plastic segregation of plastic bags and kitchen waste, because if we are able to do that, then we can save the stray animals, particularly cows, to eat these bags in search of vegetable peels. Because when they eat these bags, which is mixed with plastic, so this is not good for them, for their health, and uh, also which is very dangerous for their health and hinder the process of waste segregation while doing management of it. And I have and the persons whom I would like to work with are the women particularly, because I have seen the activeness of women in the rural areas regarding these changes, and also they are very much active in working with the cattle conservation and all these things. So these are my audience. These are people whom I would love to work with, and also, and the biggest hindrance I feel doing so is that people are ignorant of these kind of changes, like say segregation of waste and all, because they think that this is very time consuming and all, and what we will be able to do, so they are ignorant of that.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing this. And Yeah, I think you were very clear about the problem, and also it was interesting that you shared about how this is a kind of an information that has been passed down to you, right? It's not something new. When you talk about sustainable lifestyles, we often we think that it's a very new term because it's suddenly become in trend. But what our grandparents have always been practicing has been sustainable, in ways like we cannot even imagine, right? So there are so many ways that we have diverted from the traditional ways of doing things, and then that's when our lifestyle became very unsustainable. But you were correct to point out that grandmothers and grandfathers have played a very important role, and in passing down a lot of values of sustainability, which often in this fast race of a life that we are now in, we often forget and we've neglected, or probably we think it's not it's not cool to be do these practices because what would people think. So there is also a social stigma, right? And you've highlighted the problems, so I think your target audience that you want to work with are already the people who have some kind of an interest in this subject, right? That is what you were trying to say. I'm
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
you've identified a target audience as people who have prior interest, they share similar values as you do, and that is the type of people that you want to first initiate your conversations with and engage them, and probably through them then you can start bringing changes at their households, and also at the larger community. So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else?
Thank you,
Maybe
ma'am.
one discussion, maybe.
Ma'am, I would like to go.
Yeah, sure.
So I have chosen one of my neighbor. So I've written that I am Rinki Prathwani. I am 38 years old and I am a housewife and I have two children. And we live with our mother-in-law and we have a small family business which we run up. So, in order to adopt this practice of waste segregation, I think the main problem is that the municipal council itself is not taking any kind of action to deal with this problem. The garbage van which comes at my locality does not have separate bins for wet waste and other waste. So, even if I try to do that, it will ultimately get mixed up. And we do not have any open area to work for such change with from ourselves. However, we do most of the times what we do that we use these waste to make compost for our personal gardens and plants, and sometimes we give it to cows to eat. And I am aware that this practice of making compost out of waste will be very beneficial in long run, in a long run. But in order to make a significant change, the municipal corporation itself have to take some action. That's all I've written. My target audience will be women.
Women. Great. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. From what you've written, you've identified yourself. You've created a character of a housewife who has seen the problems, who knows of the problems that exists in terms of waste segregation, and also you see the the kind of gap that is there in between the household and the people who come and collect, right? Like what you've said, a lot of people have complained that even if they segregate the waste at the household, when they finally come to collect it, it all goes into the same space. uh, the other thing that I liked from your thing was also that you identified the barrier that you have at your house, like the space crunch, so because you don't have enough space, not you but the character that you have created does not have enough space. So that is a problem that a lot of people in urban areas would have. So that is when you're pointing that barrier, then it will help you to also think of ways in where you can address initiate conversations to adopt the change, but also while not telling people that you need to have a big compost pit, because that is not possible, right? Like you're saying, that is a barrier that people have in your locality. There is not enough space. So what you can do is, maybe instead of having a horizontal pit, you could introduce these vertical pits, you have these earthen pots which are stacked one upon the other, where you can do composting, and for that you just need a small corner in your in your house space. And you've also tapped into the interest of how the compost can be used into your own home garden. So this is again important for you to know, because this will help you, like, when you're approaching the communities, if you know where the interests and where what the motivations are, you can tap into these interests that they already have. You don't have to go and, you don't, it's not necessary for you to go and talk to them immediately about conservation, about environment, like, about the effects of, not segregating your waste, about the bad impact into the environment. Sometimes people don't understand environmental message, like, in the first place, right? So maybe you can start with telling communities, like for your case, maybe you can say that, you have a home garden, so why don't you, instead of purchasing manure from outside, you could create the compost in your own house using, like, these vertical composters. So when you are able to think as the person that you want to work with, it gives you a better idea of how you design your study, your approach, and your intervention. And also, most of you, all three of you, who shared, like, you are very specific about the target audience that you want to work with. And that is also very important, so that, you know that through them, they are your channel to bring about this particular change or spread the message for a particular cause in the larger community. So, can we move on in that case? Thank you all for participating. I hope you were able to understand why we did this activity in the first place. Yeah, it's just basically to put yourself and allow yourself to, think from the point of view as the target audience that you want to work with. Now I'll go on to my presentation. So, until now, what I've spoken to you about was our work in North Bengal, where we focused the first 4 years on gathering ecological information, because, like, that was what our main focus was. But over time, we also saw opportunities to now start engaging with communities, and the way we've designed our study and the way we plan to approach the communities to be able to give us a better understanding of, what the community composition is like. So that is because it's a fairly new landscape that we've been working in. We started off with first doing the research on hornbills, and then also, like, in the last 4 years, the communities now know us, right? They're more comfortable with us, they know us by names. A lot of them, like, we go and we have tea in their houses, they invite us for dinners. So now they're already reached in a comfortable position where, like, maybe they will not be they will not question us immediately when we start going and doing these surveys. So that was what we're doing in North Bengal. Now I would come to our work in Arunachal Pradesh. So in Arunachal Pradesh, NCF has been working for over 24 years on hornbill research and conservation. And the work, although has focused on a lot on other aspects of not just hornbills, but a lot of other research on small mammals, on frugivories, like, there's a lot of other research that has been done. And amongst them, I'm going to talk about today a community-based conservation initiative, the Hornbill Nest Adoption Program, which completes 10 years. To give you an idea of where the Hornbill Nest Adoption Program is based out of, it is here that we work with this area called the Papam Reserve Forest, which is just outside the Pake Tiger Reserve. Yeah. So Papam Reserve Forest has a larger area as compared to the Pake Tiger Reserve, but it receives a lesser degree of protection by virtue of it not being a protected area. And while NCF's team was doing a lot of research on hornbills in the tiger reserve, they also realized that, the adjoining forest was getting like depleted. There was rapid decline of forest cover just outside the tiger reserve, and there was increasing anthropogenic pressures in these reserve forest. So we know that hornbills are wide-ranging birds. Like, they move from widely from one place to another, and so they were both using the Pake Tiger Reserve as well as the reserve forest. Hornbills, like any other animal, does not understand geographical barriers, right? So they were, of course, using both the tiger reserve and the reserve forest, and that gave us an opportunity to increase the scope of conservation beyond the tiger reserve. And for doing that, it was important that we work with local communities who are part of the landscape as well. So we had to then increase our conservation efforts outside the tiger reserve, because tiger reserve is already protected by law, right? So there is reduced anthropogenic pressure there. But the reserve forest at the same time was seeing a rapid decline in forest cover. So that was the seed that started this hornbill nest adoption program. And the local community that we work with belong to the Nishi community, which is the dominant tribe in Paki and the surrounding. And it's also interesting that the headgear that they wear, the Nishi community, the headgear that they wear has a beak of the great hornbill as part of the gear, the headgear, right? And over the years, through a lot of sensitization, a lot of conservation interventions, the communities have replaced the natural beak of the great hornbill with this fiberglass beak. So nowadays you don't see people wearing the natural great hornbill beak, but they all have this pudung with the fiberglass beak. So we know that the people there had a very deep cultural association with hornbills, and that is also the reason how, a lot of the members were interested in conserving this particular, animal, the hornbills, because they had a lot of folk tales, a lot of folk stories that were already associated with hornbills, and they were very, very important in their own traditions and culture. So that led to the start of this community-based program called the Hornbill Nest Adoption Program, which was launched in 2012 as a three-way partnership between the Forest Department, the Ghora Abe Society, which is a council of village headmen, and Nature Conservation Foundation. So it is based on 3-year MOUs, and the responsibilities and roles of each partner is laid out. And in 2017, we also had the Page Paga Hornbill Festival Committee, which joined in as the fourth partner. So these are all other local partners that we work with, right? So it's important that you have established relationships with local partners who also take the lead in making sure that the program is successful. The concept of HNAP, the Hornbill Nest Adoption Program, is that the hornbills have three sets of parents. One is the biological parents, which are hornbills. Then we have the local Nishi members who work as nest protectors. So they're popularly known as nest protectors, and they are the local guardians of hornbills. And other citizens and institutions who come ahead to support the program in financially and in other ways. So we bring together the local communities as well as a lot of other people who don't even belong to this landscape in supporting conservation initiatives for the protection of hornbills. Currently in HNAP, we have 11 nest protectors, all belonging to the Nishi community. As you can see, some of them are very elder, some of them are young. A lot of them, they've also they used to be hunters previously. Because hunting is it's part of the tradition and the culture, right? In a lot of these spaces. So a lot of them have now converted, and they are true conservationists, and they also help us in spreading the message of conservation in their communities. Over the last 10 years, we've had about 21 nest protectors who've been associated in the program. The responsibilities of the nest protectors are they monitor and protect hornbill nests during the breeding season, about 4 to 5 months. They go and right from the beginning of the nesting season, they go and they try and see which are the trees that are active, or which have been where the hornbill pair has decided to go and breed in, and also which are the nests which are not active in a particular year. And throughout the breeding season, they go to these nests very frequently and see whether the nests are okay, whether the vicinity is safe. And they also help in conducting roost monitoring. So in these landscapes, hornbills, they roost or they come together in large congregations in the evening. So from these congregations also we get an idea of their populations. So we've been conducting roost monitoring on in different parts of the Sijusa circle, like the different villages. So all these nest protectors belong to about 10, 12 villages across the Sijusa circle. So each of them have their own designated nest trees and their own roost sites, which they go and monitor. And in the non-breeding season, they also walk around in transects, and they count hornbills and other wildlife to also give an estimation of the population. And under the program, there were some rules that were evolved, and the responsibilities and duties of the nest protectors were decided upon by all the partners together. And each nest protector, while joining the program, they sign an agreement where they agree to monitor and protect hornbill nests and habitat, and to not be involved in any hunting or logging. So the nest protectors, like the hornbill nest adoption program, has just not been a source of livelihood, but is also kind of an identity for them. Over the years, NCF has given them various trainings in helping them improve their skills to record their observations. They're able to now, document their observations and upload it on an online portal. And they've also been trained on conducting nature camps, on these nature education modules that NCF has created in this landscape. So they are trained and they help us conducting these camps every year. The Hornbill Nest Adoption Program has received several local and national level recognition, including the Sanctuary Asia Award in 2014 and the India Biodiversity Award in 2016. And like I told you, they help us in sensitizing the communities on conservation issues and the need for conserving not just hornbills but also the habitat. And thus, they are looked upon as conservation leaders and role models in their villages. This is what a typical weekly meeting of the nest protectors look like. It's so engaging because each one comes with their own stories of what they observed, what do they feel like, what can be improved, what can be done. And we have these meetings at 8 o'clock at this traditional Nishi house of Vijay, who is also a nest protector. And they all bring in their data, and Tajik here, who's the local coordinator, uploads all of them on this online portal. So we have these very interesting conversations that go on for about 1 to 2 hours every Monday. And just to tell you what the role of the nest protectors are, I'd like to share this story with you from this year itself. In the middle of the the breeding season this year in June, we started receiving frantic calls from Prem Tok. So Prem is this young and very motivated nest protector who joined the HNAP in 2016. And he had gone for a regular nest monitoring of this Reeth hornbill occupied nest tree, and which also has another oriental pied hornbill nest tree in the vicinity. So he had gone to monitor these nests, and he noticed a few men in the vicinity who would have come to cut trees. He went and he spoke to the men, and he informed the men about these nest trees which had hornbills occupying in them. The female and the chick would have been hatched by then. So he told them that I mean, this is the kind of there's such valuable trees here. We have hornbills nesting in it. The forest is so important. He convinced them not to cut trees, and the men left. But Prem was very scared that they would come back and they would cut trees again when he was not around. So he then went up to Tajik. So Tajik is the local coordinator since 2017, and he's been a nest protector since 2013. Tajik is not just a well-respected person in the community, but he is also a very, very interested conservationist and a very motivated one as well. He went to the person who they suspected had sent the men, and the person admitted that they were in fact his men. Sometimes people they require hood for different purposes, right? So he had sent these men to cut trees, and he told Tajik that they came back and they told him about their interaction with Prem, and he told Tajik that we've already withdrawn these people from the area and we will not be disturbing that patch. So Tajik told them that it was not just the hornbill nest trees that were important, but also the overall habitat, which is as crucial and important for hornbills and other wildlife to thrive. So this is the kind of role that they play, the nest protectors play, and this is the reason why it is important to work with local communities, because they know through dialogue itself you can mitigate some of these problems. So we're happy to share that both the nest trees saw successful chick fledging this year as well, thanks to the timely interventions of the nest protectors. Currently, we have 35 hornbill nests that are being monitored and protected. And over the years, the last 10 years, 173 hornbill chicks have successfully fledged from these nests. So like I told you in the beginning, the idea is not just to work with the local communities, but to get a whole wide range of other people who are interested in conservation to come ahead and support like this particular intervention. So we had an 11-year-old boy who like donated to the Hornbill Nest adoption program. We had the local Nishi women's self-help group who's also supported the program, and a lot of other zoos who contribute to the program. And these are the nest protectors who have been very, very active and very very proactive in helping conserve hornbills in this landscape for over a decade now. So I'd like to show this video. I'm not able to play the video from the presentation, so I will just stop sharing my screen and share it from the tab. This is just a short clip from a larger video that is available on YouTube. So I'll just show you a small part about the role of the nest protectors in in their own voice, you can hear about what they do. Let me know if you're not able to hear the audio or see the video.
Local people का बिना अकेला सा.
Can you hear the video?
Yes, we can.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. I'm just playing it now.
सारा जंगल को प्रोटेक्शन देना, जानवर को प्रोटेक्शन देना पॉसिबल नहीं है.
The main concept is shared parenting. Each hornbill nest has 3 sets of parents: the biological parents, the hornbills themselves, the local guardians who are the Nishi villagers, and the faraway urban citizens who wish to support and be a part of the hornbill conservation efforts. The hornbills look after their chicks, and the local nest protectors guard the nests and nest trees, and the urban adopters provide financial and other support.
हम लोग नेस्ट प्रोटेक्टर लोग पूरा ये जितना एरिया है हम लोग पूरा घूमता है.
हर नेस्ट में जाके कौन सा नेस्ट सफा हो गया, कौन सा सफा नहीं है, उसको हम चेक करता है.
जैसे कि 6 नेस्ट है, तो अभी आप यहाँ देख रहे हैं ये वाला ये ओपीज नेस्ट है, तो जीएच का भी है आगे पे. तो हम लोग एक दिन यहाँ रहेंगे, दूसरा दिन फिर दूसरा नेस्ट में जाके देखते हैं. तो साथ में वही है कि पेड़ भी बच जाए, कटिंग और बाहर का जो लोग यहाँ कोई नहीं कटिंग नहीं करेंगे आदमी रहने से.
चैलेंजेस तो बहुत है, जूक से लड़ना पड़ता है. सबसे बड़ा तो मच्छर और जूक. पेड़ में भी शांति से बैठने नहीं देते हैं. कुछ भी करो, जूक हुआ उठेगा, यह उठेगा, हटाओ उसको. लेकिन एलिफेंट को तो बहुत डर लगता है. एलिफेंट तो रास्ता में बहुत मिला, भागा भी बहुत हम लेकिन भी हम हारता नहीं है. अरे जाके देखना है अपना नेस्ट को. पहले तो हम एक हंटर था, बहुत सा हॉर्नबिल मार के गिराया, खाया भी बहुत है. अभी बहुत अच्छा लगता है, देख के बहुत अच्छा लगता है. आजकल हंटिंग छोड़ दिया.
अभी देखते देखते मतलब ऐसे लगता है मतलब अपना फैमिली जैसे ऐसे दिल में आ जाता है.
हम भी नया जब भी एनसीएफ में ज्वाइन हुआ था, बिल्कुल इंटरेस्ट नहीं था. कैसे करेगा, मैडम लोग तो बोलते रहते हैं, अरे इंटरेस्ट दो. कोई जंगल में जाता है, सिर्फ नेस्ट को देखता है, कुछ भी इंटरेस्ट दिखाई देता है नहीं. तब लास्ट में अच्छा से साथ में दिल लगा के किया है, तो सच में बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है.
हॉर्नबिल जैसे प्यार मुश्किल है. जब अंदर घुसता है वो समय को बहुत प्यार से घुसाता है उसको. तो अभी पहले तो हम लोग भी मरता था, आजकल उसको बचाने के चलते अभी इतना दुख लगता है कि जो मारने वाला को बोलता है बहुत पाप लगेगा.
हॉर्नबिल खत्म होने से बाद में आप लोग का सुंदरता खत्म हो जाएगा और जंगल खत्म हो जाएगा.
So the data that the nest protectors collect is yielding long-term information on hornbill nesting success to compare it with what is happening in the park, because our monitoring also continues in the park. So it is a good blend of research and conservation.
लोग अभी रियलाइज हो गया कि हम हॉर्नबिल नहीं मारना है, तो अभी मुर्गी का तरफ गांव का बीच में हॉर्नबिल आके सोता है रात को, तो वो लोग बहुत काफ़ी महसूस करता है, प्राउड फील करता है.
पहले तो सब लोग उसको मारता था ना, आज नेस्ट प्रोटेक्टर लोग ये ड्यूटी कर रहा है, ज़्यादा आदमी भी नहीं मार रहा है, हंटिंग भी ज़्यादा नहीं कर रहा है. ये लोग प्रोटेक्ट करके आज ज़्यादातर ज़्यादा ही बच रहा है और हम लोग के समाज के लिए भी अच्छा है और फ्यूचर में हम लोग बच्चा लोग भी देख सकेगा।
जब हॉर्नबिल घर से गुजरते हैं तो इतना मजा, कि नज़ारा इतना सुंदर है, इसका आवाज़ सुनने के बाद वाओ।
पहले ये ऐसे मैंने आना जाना यहाँ नहीं होता था, अभी बहुत नज़दीक आता है, हर शाम को आता है यहाँ में ग्रुप, मैंने पूरा मैंने ग्रुप में आता है, आके यहाँ में होस्टिंग करता है, यहाँ बैठता है।
The thought of hornbills flying free and using these forests, which are also part of its range and home, makes us continue.
So that was just a short clip about of our larger video. If you're interested to watch the complete video, I will share the name. It's called Protecting Paga, Protecting the Hornbills of Arunachal Pradesh, and it was created by our long-term supporter Adarsh Raju. It's available on YouTube. There's also a recently released movie on our work in hornbills and the Hornbill Nest Adoption Program, which is recently released in this season 2 of the On the Brink series. It's a series on Hotstar Disney Plus, so you can go and watch this particular episode along with a lot of other interesting videos. So this episode on hornbills covers our work and shows the role of the nest protectors, and also how Dr. Aprajita Datta, who's basically who's been leading the hornbill research and conservation in the Eastern Himalaya for the last 24 years. Like, she started off with her PhD research on hornbills in this landscape, and how it has now gone in the last 20 years, how it has seen so many changes, and how it has led to the successful success of this particular conservation, community-based conservation as well. So you can see the entire work and the kind of conservation efforts that is going on in these two videos. Also, just quickly to take you through our other engagement with other stakeholders in these communities. Apart from working with adults of the communities, we also thought it was important to engage with young students. So NCF works with 7 schools located outside the Pake Tiger Reserve. And we've been having these year-long activities and engagements with the students. And we also conduct 3-day nature camps inside the Tiger Reserve. Even though for many of these students who have been born and brought up in this Papam Reserve Forest, Pake Tiger Reserve is basically like their backyard, but they've never entered the forest, and so the nature camps gives us a good opportunity for us to take them inside the Tiger Reserve and show them the kind of wealth, the biodiversity, richness of their own landscape. We do a lot of activities to help them understand ecological processes, and we allow them to explore the forest. And this is not just a one-time thing again. For all of these interventions, it's important that you have long-term engagements. And so the nature education program also, it started off in 2017, but we plan to have a long-term engagement with these schools. And over the next 10-15 years, we hope that all the students that have been associated with us through this program, they come out as local champions and protecting their environment. And we hope to have a generation that is sensitized towards environmental protection in the long term. Of course, apart from the Hornbill Nest Adoption Program and the Nature Education Program, NCF also has a lot of other field research. We have a long restoration program, which has been working on reviving and restoring degraded patches of forest. And for all of these other research as well, we work closely with the local communities. Some of them have been employed and have been working with the program for over 10 years now. So as you can see, for us, the community members have always formed the backbone of our conservation efforts in this landscape. And it's very important that you engage and you work with them. So just to end my talk with a few takeaways, it's important that you conduct proper research and you collect proper baseline information on the kind of work that you want to do. and your research findings and your conservation efforts has to go hand in hand. Contextualization is very important because what works in one site may not work in another site, right? Like I showed you in North Bengal, we've been working for the last 4 years, and because of that, it was important that we start right from scratch. We start from understanding the species, the hornbill habitat relationships. Then where do the communities fit in? We need to start understanding the role of the communities, what are the relationships that they have with their surrounding environment, and then we try and design some kind of a conservation initiative which will involve the local communities. Whereas in Pake, because it's the Hornbill Research and Conservation Program has happened over the last 24 years, in 2011 and 12, discussions to start a community-based conservation started after having a lot of background information about the species and the landscape and the different challenges that the landscape faces. So this led to this 10-year-old hornbill nest adoption program, which continues even now. So it's important that you understand each site's challenges, the opportunities that you can work into, and also each of these areas have a lot of local knowledge in the communities. So you need to tap into these knowledge and you need to tap into these systems in the correct way. So they channelize the knowledge that they already have into a fruitful and something that will benefit conservation and the communities in the long run. When you're approaching these landscapes, and it's important that you include the local communities in all of your work. You need to be very sensitive towards them and the traditions. And at the end of it, your goal should also be that you build enough capacities of the local communities. For us, especially during the pandemic, right, a lot of us got stuck at home, working from home. But our fieldwork in all these sites continued because there was enough trainings that the local communities who are part of a program had received over the last 10, 15 years, and they were able to carry out all the research work even during the pandemic, right? Our research work did not stop because they were trained enough to be able to do all the research themselves. So it's important that in the long run, you build capacities of local communities, you give them various trainings, you get them to be technologically savvy, get them to computer trainings and all of that. And for a longer term, for the long-term sustenance of such conservation interventions, you need to have and build a network of local conservation leaders. So I'd like to end today's talk by again thanking Dr. Tiwari and the organizers of this course for inviting me. All of the work that I spoke about is guided by Dr. Aparajita Datta, who is a senior scientist, and she heads the Eastern Himalaya program of NCF. Also Dr. Rohit Naniwadekar, who is also a senior scientist, and he guides us in our work. So if you want to know more about our work, we are on Facebook as Hornbill Conservation Program Northeast, NE India. And recently we've joined Instagram as easternhimalaya.ncf. So we try and share our regular field updates and our research work on these social media handles as well. So yeah, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pradhan, for this wonderful, exciting talk. A lot of videos, a lot of visuals, and really amazing. I mean, it was that you literally took us there. We were there in the field to see what kind of work has been done. So an amazing presentation, an amazing narrative and a story that we all have heard. So if there are any questions for her, maybe you can put it in the chat box, you can unmute yourself and ask. There is one question by one of my colleagues. He's also a very ardent bird watcher, Dr. Asani Bhadri. He had to leave for some urgent work, but he had just put up a question here and texted me that he would want to know about this. So he's asked that you can take it up from the chat box.
This is about
I think the Asani Bhadri.
Okay, during the past 10 years of hornbill nest adoption program, did you see any change in the hornbill population size over the years? We have been conducting transect surveys to estimate hornbill populations, but the thing is, we've not sat down to analyze and see the difference in population before or at the initial stages of the program and what it is now. We do have the data, but I cannot say for sure. But hearing from the local people, they do tell us that the hornbill population has increased. They say that they have been seeing a lot of hornbills over the last few years, and it's also because hunting has declined, like due to a lot of other conservation initiatives. And also the nest protectors, like I told you, they're very very serious about their job. They take their nest monitoring very seriously, and they also help in a lot of sensitization, even apart from the workshops and all that we we conduct on a everyday basis. Also, you see these nest protectors just generally talking to adults and like young children about and spreading the message of conservation. And from the testimonials of the local people, they claim that there has been a great significant increase in the hornbill population.
Just a follow up to what Asini had asked. So I wish to know that, uh, I mean, over a period of time, 10 years and even more since the nest adoption program had been working, did you found an increase in the number of nests being built, or any changes in the maybe encounter rate, if not systematic transit studies or systematic habitat occupancy study had been done? But then any change in the encounter rate, as you said, that locals have been saying that they see hornbills more often these days, which means there could be a change in the encounter of the species if you're moving out, from the village, or if you're entering and walking a path in the forest. So, any comments on that? Any changes if you have noticed?
Yeah, so the for the encounter rates, we do have data, like I said you, but we've not sat down to analyze it yet. So I don't think I'm in a position to tell you about the results, because we've not really looked into it. We have encounter rates over different years, but we've not really seen the kind of we've not really compared the data. So that is something that we now plan to work with. And now that we have 10 years of data, it's important that we also see what is the kind of impact that the program has had in the population itself. So that is our immediate, we plan to work on it immediately. Although we have all the information that we require, it just takes a lot of time to sit down with that 10-year of data and put it together and analyze it. But yes, we plan to do that. You had asked another question about the nest occupancy, right? So unfortunately, what happens in the reserve forest is the reserve forest continues to face a lot of anthropogenic pressures. There are a lot of other problems, which I did not cover in the presentation, but from a study that our team recently did in 2020, which was published, we've seen that the overall habitat in the reserve forest continues to decline, while the hornbill nest adoption program has protected individual hornbill nest trees. We've seen in the first year when the hornbill nest adoption program started in 2012, we lost, I think, 3 to 4 nest trees or hornbill nest trees. But after that, we've not lost any hornbill nest trees except for one last year. So through the nest adoption program, we have been able to protect these standing nest trees, but the overall habitat in the adjoining area continues to decline. There are a lot of local problems for that. There's a lot of logging pressure, particularly in this area. So yeah, we are that's something that is it's beyond our work. We try to work in different ways to try and sensitize people to reduce their I mean, to not cut and fell these trees. But there is a lot of other things that goes on as well in these communities.
Thank you for sharing that information with us. So, if there are any other questions, any no queries for her, I think there are some comments by Himanshu. Commendable work, being done. Spellbound and speechless watching the video.
Thank you so much.
Radhika says it was such a great session, ma'am, and hearing the testimonials of the people is so inspiring. Yes, it is. I mean, in fact, I was about to say that getting to see people having some positive change in their life with a conservation program is something that really amazing about this whole program, and I think it would be a good motivation for other similar programs in different parts of the country. Himanshu is also asking question, how communities is affected by conservation programs and how it has changed their livelihood. So if you want to comment on that.
Through conservation programs, I mean, there is a positive impact to the communities, because a lot of these areas now also tourism has become a very major aspect of the livelihood. So even if people are not directly involved in hornbill conservation through our different programs, a lot of them have started building homestays, and a lot of them have turned into nature guides. So parquet is now becoming very popular as a hornbill, for photographers, for birders, for wildlife enthusiasts to go and watch hornbills, because they know that these hornbills come towards the village area in the evenings to roost. And even on a general everyday basis, you will get to see some kind of hornbill movement. So a lot of people acknowledge the fact that these conservation interventions have helped to increase the hornbill population, which indirectly has also then boosted tourism practices in this area. So that ways it has changed. And in terms of direct livelihood, the nest protectors are have been employed under the HNAP, and throughout the year, they receive their monthly salaries. Like I told you, for our other research program, like the restoration program, the nature education program, a lot of these also, we have people who've been employed directly under NCF's program. So for them, they have direct benefits of being part of the conservation initiative, but there are a lot of other indirect benefits, like I told you, the increase in tourism in this area. There is very recently, in fact, some 5-6 years back, there are a lot of homestays that have come up. And also there was this hornbill festival, right, that started off a few years back, in which NCF also was had a part to play. So even that kind of brought parquet into the limelight, and a lot of people then again came to know about this area. And that also, during the festival, there's a lot of people who come poured into parquet, and all the homes are filled. People bring up stalls, and so food stalls, and so many other things that happens during these festival days. So yeah, people have started looking up at hornbills as a way of improving livelihoods as well, because it has definitely boosted tourism in the region.
Thank you very much for joining us here today, Ms. Pradhan. I think you have been talking for 1.5 hours, more than 1.5 hours now. You must be tired. So there are more comments now, no questions as such. So I think we can rest our session here today. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing your experience and of research and community-based programs with all of us. I'm sure that we would like to welcome you once again, maybe for some another event where more similar participants and other group of students can also join and get to know about the kind of work that you and your team at NCF had been doing. So thank you very much for joining us here. On behalf of all the participants and the entire IP College community, I would like to extend my thanks to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining in.
Thank you.
Yeah. I hope the session was not too technical and there was too much of information.
I think this session was exactly what we envisaged it to be. So so it was really amazing. Thank you. Thanks so a lot. For all the participants, we will be joining tomorrow for the last session, the valedictory session of this course. So see you at 2:30 tomorrow. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye.